everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are here tonight to do the last episode of season 2 for Rings of Power, and it was really rocking episode. I enjoyed it a lot, and I will toss it over to Brian as usual first to get a couple of overall comments from him.
Yeah, my first reaction was not that enthusiastic. I really liked the way the elf line resolved, and I think the Gandalf Hobbit line just made sense. You know, it wasn't good or bad for me. But I didn't like the way like Numenor resolved. I didn't like the way that the Southlanders resolved. So there were the dwarves resolved cool too. So it was high and low for me, but it was a cool episode. It just wasn't my favorite of the season. Maybe last week's was, but definitely elves and dwarves resolved very cool to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So the dwarves, that opening scene was so cool. Before you even get the credits, there's this whole thing with Durin the Third, and he's going crazy, and he breaks through the wall. There's all this mithril, and then the Balrog comes.
The best.
And he's able to take off the ring at that point, and sacrifice himself to try to, I guess, hurt the Balrog. But we have a nice little father-son exchange there, where Durin the Fourth has come down. He's like, "Dad, you're going crazy or whatever." But then this father's like, "Well, could you really lift your hand against me?" And once again, he's like, "No, I can't. I just love you too much, basically." And remember when I was little and you'd let me lift my hand a little bit when we were arm wrestling, and you were always stronger than me. And then his father, before he jumps to the Balrog, is like, "I never let you lift your hand. It was just you getting stronger." And then he calls him King Durin. So, I mean, that was a great opening. I just loved it.
Yeah, it definitely was cool. And, I now watch with an eye that I hadn't thought of before, the eye to not necessarily his Catholicism, but to Tolkien's just in general Christianity. And I think maybe you mentioned it that made me think of it, but he is very strong on good guys don't kill people that they don't, if there's any other option. And that's a particular moral stance that not everybody has. But Tolkien is very clear on that one, in that if there's any other way, good guys don't kill people. So I even saw that. I love the way that they had Durin the Fourth. No, there's no way you can conquer the ring by power, right? So instead he has to conquer it really by love, I guess,
Yeah, Tolkien, and you can see from the characters in Lord of the Rings that he's, investigating different ways that people relate to violence and killing people. Boromir seems to be like the George Armstrong Custer kind of guy, right? He's out in the front, just all happy to be all brave and killing things or whatever. Whereas Aragorn seems to be more like, just resigned if this is what your life holds. He doesn't seem to think it's good or bad. It's just there.
Yeah.
Whereas Faramir, gives a little speech about, "I do not love the sword for its sharpness, the arrow for its swiftness. I love only that which they defend." So he'd much rather never pick up a sword, So we have different male characters giving us different opinions on those kind of issues.
Yeah. So that was cool. That little flip, just simple, of course, but the idea that you can't fight the rings you can't outpower the rings, right? Mm-hmm. So I liked that.
Yeah, he's meeting evil with power doesn't work very well in Tolkien. Yeah. And speaking of this Catholicism and things, as I called it, and probably almost everybody else who's read Tolkien called it, the stranger had to look for Nori. He had to go see to his friends and not try to find a staff. Right? He had to show compassion and empathy and humility and all that, and decide, if I can't get a staff, then I can't, but I have to go to my friends. At which point, the staff finds him, and finally he's passed at least one freaking test when he found out that, you have to stick with your friends.
That's such a cool staff, too. I love that shape. It's awesome.
But then he and Nori part ways. She's going to find her own track now, and he's going to go back with Tom Bombadil and apparently learn about his powers or how to control them or something. Because we do meet the Dark Wizard, who apparently seems to think that that the stranger is going to be on his side, and just needs to, I guess, have the right motivation to come around and be part of his group. So we don't know what he really wants. Maybe what he said is true, or maybe he's just trying to lie. We don't really know. I see a lot of people online assuming that the Dark Wizard is Saruman, which makes no sense to me because Saruman didn't actually turn until right before Fellowship of the Ring takes place. So we've got thousands of years to go before Saruman ends up on the wrong side. But the two blue wizards were supposed to have come earlier than the others, and they went off to the east to Rune and were never heard from again. So I'm assuming this has to be one of the two blue wizards.
And I don't know the lore that well, but I noticed like blue colors in their costumes and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that's our hint that they're blue wizards, but I don't know enough lore to understand that all. I know who Saruman is, but I don't know when he turns.
Well, not until he gets his hands on a Palantir, which, as we mentioned before, Elendil is going to bring a whole bunch of Palantirs over from Numenor, but we've only seen one, and so who knows how they're going to go with that. But we'll find out later, I guess. Because I'm assuming that season 3 will be the forging of the One Ring. And that maybe the last episode of season 3 we'll finally see it forged. And then the next 2 seasons will be drowning Numenor and having the last alliance of men and elves. So we'll just have to see if that's how they go or not.
So we're likely looking at season 3 being a lot of back and forth in Numenor. Is that? Resistant and, two parties going at each other, or
maybe because I'm sure apparently the dwarves are going to have problems because somebody mentions to Durin the Fourth that like your brother is saying things, and the other dwarves, the other dwarf lords are interested in being king of Khazad-dum, so they're going to have their internal problems, and then we'll have to see what the Southerners do, I guess. But Numenor getting rejected by the sea worm did not save the queen.
Yeah.
I mean, it saved her for the moment, but it doesn't seem to have gotten anybody to let, toss Ar-Pharazôn out. He's still ruling everything, and she's got golden shackles on. So the Valar said she was innocent, and she's still a prisoner and not the queen. So, I mean, when it was cool, though, that she gave Narsil to Elendil. So Narsil's now in the story. And he does mention his son Anarion at long last. So, yes, we will have Anarion showing up. So, they set up some things. And, now the faithful have been declared traitors. So we're setting up that whole Fall of Numenor thing.
Yeah. And that's what annoyed me. Just like, it's just so weird that you can just declare a whole class of people traitors like that. Like, I mean, even in our crazy times, right? Like no one person can just, declare yet, God forbid, but no one person can just declare, oh, you're all traitors. And so now we're going to round you up. You know what I mean? Like, so it just happened again. It doesn't have enough development for me, but there it is. Numenor's always annoyed me. It's I love the architecture, but but great location, terrible people, annoy me to no end.
Yeah, we do see a shot of the white tree of Numenor, and it is losing its leaves. So we know that Numenor's fate is basically sealed, and it's not going to be good. I believe in season 3, we'll have to have Isildur climbing the wall at night to get that last fruit off the tree so they can bring it and plant it in Minas Tirith when they build that city. So we will see the tree die and Isildur make off with the fruit at some point. But that'll have to be season 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm such a Gryffindor. We're not supposed to talk about her, but I love Isildur energy right now. I mean, and even though I know he eventually makes some mistakes, but I love that kind of. I can't help loving hero energy. It's a total personality character defect of mine. I love that kind of energy. Well, Aragorn, Isildur, yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of Isildur, he shows up when the Numenorians apparently have shown up. And so he sees Kemen, the son of Ar-Pharazôn, and first is very happy. And of course, Kemen says, your sister will be so glad to hear you're alive. No word about his father at that point, And Isildur, who's somehow madly in love with this southern woman, and she's in love with him, says, hey, I need to take her back to Numenor with me. And he's told no. So he leaves her. She I guess, is going to stay with her boyfriend, who she just declared, in front of, that she wanted to go with Isildur, but he still holds her hand. So
I say they hold hands, so that was weird too.
yeah, he's not angry that she was about ready to run off to Numenor without him when he's built
You at
this
least
house
need to
for them.
talk about that.
And then Isildur does give the credit for saving a lot of people's lives to his horse. That was kind of cute. Oh, you helped save
We
some
definitely
people.
want to see that horse take out a few more people. I want to see that horse take out Therazon.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he and Beric. Yeah, okay. So we leave the Southerners there, kind of under the thumb of Numenor, because they're going to build I guess, like a sort of battlement there or something. So, and use the Southerners as more or less indentured servant labor.
When they said they're just trees, I'm like, yes, I want Ents in season 3. I want more Ents. Yes.
Yeah. So we leave the Numenorians there being pissy at the Southerners. We've seen the dwarves, and then we get a couple shots in the episode with the dwarves with the black covered throne. And then Durin gets told that there's other people who want the throne, and so he's going to have problems. But he does manage to send enough dwarves that even though they didn't make it at dawn, they'd still show up in time to save Elrond and Gil-galad and put the orcs to flight. So late, but just in time. And Arondir, who we saw get stabbed twice in the gut last week, apparently is fine. And
I gave up on him. I was happy to see him.
Yep. So he did survive. And then we get, the Adar gets betrayed by his own, Glug, I think is the name of that orc, who signs up with Sauron for some reason. And I really like the scene, though, because Adar puts on the ring and he turns back into his elf self, right? What he was before he got tortured by Morgoth. And that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But he rejects that face and gives her the ring back and says, let's work together.
Yeah. I'm going on record as Adar's a good guy. There was nothing. Well, he did kill, I guess, and in Tolkien, you can't really do that. I guess so.
Well, you can see his motivations. He wants to have a place for his children. They can't stand the sunlight, so we blow up the mountain and make more door stuff. But he does really seem to care. And we had the little shot last week, which I don't think we mentioned, where he's even like going to the dead ones and doing this little ritual over their bodies. And so, you get the idea that he really does care, but apparently not in a way that the Glug appreciates anymore. So he signs up for the other side, which results in Adar being stabbed a bunch of times, a la like Julius Caesar or something. He doesn't even try to fight back. It seems like he's not willing to lift a sword against his children. So
yeah, I think had he like done something to clearly betray them, that quick turn of the orcs would sit better with me. But I just don't feel like when he has treated them as well as he has, I just don't feel like Sauron's whispering could that quickly turn it. Maybe I'm just underestimating the power of Sauron, but it was too fast for me. it was coolly done, but that's the way orcs do it,
I believe Glug was the one we saw with the wife and the kitty, so I guess she's been widowed now. Because Sauron doesn't keep Glug around for very long.
Right.
Glug
turns on Adar, and then Sauron takes care of Glug real quick. Yeah.
So Sauron's got the crown back. He's now got an orc army. So he's certainly moving up in the world there. He also has apparently the cutest hairstyle. I keep seeing all these things on the line about, the little bow on the hair, and it does look like a little bow. It's like a little girly bow, and it's like, it doesn't, fit the character, I guess, but it is kind of cute. So that was just like a fun thing that, everyone's noticing this little hair bow. But really, the best scenes then, of course, are still the Anatar / Sauron versus Celebrimbor scenes. And, we find out that, he's been torturing Celebrimbor by shooting him with a bunch of arrows and hitting him in non-critical places. And he pulls the classic abuser line, right? Almost the very first thing he says is, he's kind of caressing Celebrimbor's ruined face and saying, look what you did to yourself, which is just a rephrasing of look what you made me do, right?
That's right.
So yeah, he's definitely this abuser, and Celebrimbor's not having it anymore, because like when Sauron says, "Well, I could also, I know the craft of keeping you alive. Maybe you want to see that, and then Celebrimbor says, craft, your only craft is treachery," and that really ticks Sauron
Lots
off.
of great lines in that whole exchange.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I find it interesting because obviously we got a tear out of Sauron, and I don't know if Charlie Vickers is just leading people on or not, but he says that he didn't know where that came from, but he decided just to go with it, and I guess he only did that in the one take, and the other takes, there were more than one take for the scene, so he's like, I just figured if that's the take they're going to use, that's the take they're going to use, but and they did. So then the question was, why would Sauron cry, right? This narcissist or whatever. So I was kind of thinking about that. So Charlie Vickers is going to say he didn't really know. Then I could make up my own explanation, I guess. And what would motivate Sauron to cry? Because he is this classic abuser, narcissist guy.
This hurts me more than it hurts you.
Yeah. But he cries after Celebrimbor says some things to him, including, and I wrote this down so I could get it right. Soon I shall go to the shores of the morning, borne by wind which you cannot follow. And then he also, when he says, "You're not the master of the rings," or whatever, and Sauron's like, "I am the master," and he's like, "No, you're a prisoner." He's now reminded Sauron that he can never go back to Valinor. And then also that these rings are basically going to be his undoing, which I guess Sauron maybe has suspected. And then Sauron picks up a spear and spears him, and then cries. And so, to me, I was thinking, okay, well, he's not crying because he just killed Celebrimbor and he liked Celebrimbor.
Right.
That would not be Sauron. But he could be crying because he used to live in Valinor, right? Gandalf tells us in Fellowship of the Ring that nothing is evil in its beginning. Even Sauron was not so. He starts off as Myron. He's a student of Aule. He's living in Valinor. And then he gets seduced by Morgoth and he goes off to be Morgoth's second in command. But before then, he was part of the whole party, those two trees and the Valar and, Valinor and all the cool stuff and, the beauty and goodness and all that kind of stuff. And that's, but he turned his back on it. But he's an abuser, so he can't think to himself, I did that. I chose poorly, right? That's not going to cross his mind. But he can think how beautiful it was and look what was taken from me.
That's right.
Look what you said, you just said, I cannot follow. Well, I can't follow. And it's like your fault, right?
Yeah. Why does this always happen to me?
You have to be the victim, right? He has to be the victim. Because even last week, he's like, do you know what it's like to be tortured by a god? And it's like, oh, yes, we feel so sorry for you when you were like the second in command at Thingor-Drim and, you were leading the armies of werewolves and stuff. Yeah, you're not really a victim here. But he thinks he is, right? In his mind, he is. So, I think he's crying because he remembers how good it was, but he feels like it was stolen from him, not that he chose to give it up.
He's a victim of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor me.
Yeah. So that's my explanation. If anybody else has a different explanation, put them in the comments. I'd like to hear it. That's what I came up with.
But that's rooted in classic malignant narcissism. So, I mean, there's certainly grounds for your lore there.
Of course, then we get the big battle with Sauron and Galadriel, and boy, those swords are great. They keep hitting those rocks and gravel goes spraying out everywhere. The swords never break or get chipped or anything. So, kudos to the elvish smiths who make those things. They're apparently unbreakable.
I just assume elves made them out of something that doesn't break, but I don't know. Is there something besides mithril or, that they could be made out of?
Well, I guess if they're old enough, they're from Valinor, then they would have the purest of the pure, right? Because remember they needed her brother's dagger because it was actually the purest metal because it was from Valinor, and they melted that to make the elven rings. So, don't know. But then he's a shapeshifter, so he turns into somebody we don't know with really curly hair.
That was crazy.
And then he turns into her, and then he turns into Celebrimbor. So, he's doing his little shape-shifting thing, which seems to knock the wind out of Galadriel for a little bit before she starts fighting him again. But then she gets stabbed with the crown. And But she refuses to give him the ring. She falls off a cliff. It turns out that Elrond has decided maybe the rings are okay. So he puts on her ring. Between him and Gil-galad, they managed to heal her. And I think, and one of my favorite lines, and when she wakes up in Gil-galad's like, I was used to the quiet, you know?
Yeah, that scene was awesome. I loved that scene. It's not my typical kind of a scene, but that scene was great. I loved it.
Yeah, so
I liked it because Aramir, what's his name? Aramir, the one who didn't die.
Arondir.
Arondir, yeah. I liked it because he had a place, because he's not as important as all of them, you know, but he like has a part in that scene. I think that's why I like that scene so much.
And maybe by season 3 he'll have something to do.
Yeah.
Besides be all mopey about Bronwyn.
Yeah, exactly.
And saving
he's a damn good fighter. I love to watch him fight. It's great. The only one that's more fun is to watch her fight. So, yeah.
Yeah, the elves, in one of Tolkien's letters, I did read his letters, he does say that among the elves, the men and women are both trained to fight. So it's just that the women generally stay at home, you know, and I don't know why, because you have eternity, and if you look at like these, with very rare exceptions, most of the elves have like 1 or 2 kids. Now, Fëanor had 7 sons, and I think Galadriel had 4 brothers. So sometimes you get larger families, but for the most part, they'll have like a child, maybe a second one. So they don't reproduce much, and you live forever. So you've got a whole lot of forever to fill with something besides child rearing, you know?
Right.
Want to do it one time. So yeah, I don't know why the female elves wouldn't end up in the army at some point or whatever, which I know we've seen them in the show, you know, that there seems to be a commander under Gil-galad that was last week was telling him, we need to go fight now, you know, we need to leave now to go to the battle. So so we are putting
and they killed off the woman elf that was on that, you know, when they went through that dark area. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
She was cool.
Yeah, the archer. So yeah, so that's cool. And I think that, you know, even if Tolkien maybe wasn't really cool about having women soldiers, just because he's from that era.
That's right.
But he did at least in his letters say that it could have been possible because the women were also trained to fight. So
Galadriel's badass though. I love when she gets going. Even when she gets pissed, like, you know, when people act pissed in art, it's not usually, it doesn't feel intimidating, you know, like it can in real life. But when she's pissed, man, you just know that she's got deadly energy, you know. I love it. I love it.
All right. So overall, I was really happy with this episode. I tried to watch at least some of it before I went to work last Thursday. So I saw the Durin scene. It's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And I got up a few scenes past that, but then I had to leave. So and now no more Rings of Power for a while. But
yeah,
no one seems to be worried that it's going to get canceled.
Let's cross our fingers.
I mean, yeah, I suppose we could be surprised, but no one seems to think that that's going to happen. So hopefully not, and then we won't have to wait maybe 2 whole years for.
Yeah, I'd like to see them start filming. I'll feel a lot better.
Yeah,
they should be by now. Usually, by the time you release the series, you should be on the next season.
What would they? You know, of course, Ismail Cordova-Cruz has said he hasn't seen any scripts yet. So, and then all except one of the writers is now gone. I don't know if they left for other jobs willingly or if they were fired or what, but. Since especially the last 3 episodes of the season really seem to be, you know, much tighter and well written and stuff. It's kind of sad to see people who wrote those go, but you know, maybe they'll have the same showrunners, so maybe they'll.
Well, it gives me time to go listen to the Silmarillion.
That's right. Yeah, and if you were watching, not read the Silmarillion, I would suggest reading it. Just understand it's not a novel; it's just a bunch of basically folk tales, more or less, put together. So. Every chapter is going to be like about somebody different in a different time, you know. So it's not really a book in that sense, a novel with a single plot line. It's just the lore, the mythology of Middle Earth that you might know if you were a little elvish kid going to school. You would have learned about these people in class or something, you know, and how the universe got made and where evil came from and all that kind of stuff. What happened to Numenor? So. It's a cool read if you like that kind of thing. I always like backstory, so I loved it. But many people really hate it. Just depends.
I love world building. I even watch videos about world building just because I love world building. So yeah, it sounds like it's up my alley. I got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this season, maybe it's not a 5 stars because sometimes we get a little dull when you look at the Southerners. And although I like the Entwives, not too keen on the whole Theo storyline. So you had to put up some Theo to get some Entwives. But overall, really liked it. So I'm really looking forward to season 3.
Yeah, I'd give 4 out of 5. Whereas last season I might have said 3 out of 5, maybe, Yeah.
Okay. And I just love the whole trial by sea monster thing. That
was your favorite?
I love that whole stuff. Just the sound of the horns calling the sea monster in, and then it grabbing her and looking at her underwater and spitting her back out. And, I think the whole thing is just really cool. And it feels almost like true to Tolkien in a sense, because, the Numenorians are all about ocean, and they're all sailors, and the ocean's always calling to them to go explore and whatever. So that they have this sort of trial by sea monster instead of something on land, seems to work for their kind of culture.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked the ending of the elf thing. I don't know why, because sometimes Tolkien language gets a little too much for me. But I just like the way it resolved. I definitely like the way the dwarves did. But I would say if I had to pick a scene that's really fresh in my mind, now of course recency and primacy, but that one really sticks out when I think back over the whole season. Yeah,
it didn't end. Like I said, we now know that this is where Rivendell is going to be. So Elrond's going to make a little city kind of thing here. And the fact that they're asking her, should we go to Valinor or should we fight? And she's like, let's listen to our friend Celebrimbor and remember that strength doesn't defeat evil. That light does. So clearly the elves are going to stay and fight and try to be, using the light, I guess, of like truth and justice of the American way.
It closed the way it opened, yeah. Right? Like I said with Doran, you can't defeat the ring with power, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously leave us your comments if you agree or disagree with what we've said and if you're looking forward to or not looking forward to season 3. Also hit the like and subscribe. I appreciate that very much. And we will see you in the future.
Yeah, only the Valar know. Yeah.